Okay, hello everybody. We will start in a few seconds, so please be patient. An alle Deutschsprachigen, vielleicht wundert ihr euch, aber wir werden dieses Webinar, dieses Gespräch auf Englisch führen und wir haben jetzt keine andere Möglichkeit gesehen, als uns den Gast, den wir eingeladen haben, hier auf Englisch eben zu machen, dieses Gespräch, und deswegen bitte ich euch um Verständnis, dass wir das auf Englisch aufzeichnen werden. Hoffentlich werden wir in Zukunft auch in der Lage sein, solche Informationsveranstaltungen, Gespräche und so weiter auch auf Deutsch zu veranstalten. Okay, I switch again to English now. I welcome everyone. I just said in German why it will be in English, but we are not able to make the translation, and it will take a lot of time, and we didn't have the possibility to do it. So I hope people do understand this situation anyway. So we will start in a few minutes. We're just waiting for people to come in and join the meeting. Let's see, when a decent number of people are there, we will get started. And I'm also waiting for Mohammad to join the meeting, and then we will be ready to go. Hello, Mohammad. Can you hear me? Okay. Now Mohammad is coming too, and we will, hello, hi, I think now you're there.
Hello, comrade. Hi.
Hi, Mohammad. I hope you're okay. We are live now, and I welcome everybody to the webinar, to this talk today. My name is Aitak. I am one of the co-founders of the Facebook platform Free Palestine FFM. FFM is the shortage of the name of the city Frankfurt. Some of you might know this page. It's more or less a label for actions that we are now doing since 2016 about. And I want to welcome warmly Mohammad Khatib. He is the Europe coordinator of the Palestinian Prisoner Solidarity Network, Samidoun. Samidoun, for those who don't speak Arabic, the meaning of Samidoun is resistant or steadfast. In German, I want to explain it as well. Das Wort Samidoun bedeutet widerständig oder standhaft. And Samidoun is an international network of organizers and activists working to build solidarity with Palestinian prisoners in their struggle for freedom. Samidoun developed out of the September-October 2011 hunger strike of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, seeing a need for a dedicated network to support Palestinian prisoners. And I think, Mohammed, you will see this too. Still, we have a really big necessity to follow up this work and support the Palestinian prisoners, also the child prisoners. This webinar today we will not be able to deal with a lot of aspects of the history and the presence of the struggle in Palestine for liberation. There are a whole range of different aspects that we will not be able to talk about. So I want to shortly only tell you why we have been taking this slogan today to make this talk and have this session. The background is actually that our demonstration on the 1st of July this year, because of the annexation plans of the Israeli occupation led by Netanyahu and the settlers, we had a demonstration in Frankfurt, and as you might know, our mayor in Frankfurt is a very fanatic pro-Zionist lobbyist, and he one day, I think after the demonstration, started with his threats against us because of this slogan, because in the demonstration the slogan was shouted and proudly shouted, the slogan "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And I think a lot of you know also maybe the case of the American journalist Mark Hill, who was suspended also from his job because of this slogan. So it is not just a German problem, it's also an international propaganda tool of the Zionist lobby to put the movement and support of the Palestinian struggle under pressure. And the statement is actually that who is shouting this slogan or supporting the slogan is doing nothing else but calling for the destruction of the Jews and or the state of Israel. We want to talk today about the backgrounds of the slogan, but it doesn't mean that we will stick to the slogan only, but we want to really understand what is behind it and what's the history and what is the meaning of it. And I think Mohammad will help us a lot. Mohammad, you were raised up in Lebanon in a refugee camp, and I think from the beginning of your life you have been in the movement, and with a lot of experience that you have as an activist and a lot of knowledge about the history of the movement. So, what do you think about these threats from our mayor or from the Zionist lobby against people who are supporting the Palestinian case?
Thank you very much, Attack, and for everyone for organizing this and for inviting me. And thank you, and I'm not in a position even to thank you, but we recognize the strong work that you are doing in Frankfurt and in Germany in general, in the solidarity movement with Palestine and trying to build under all of this repression and oppression by the German state. But because if you started with this specific question about this specific mayor, so I think as a Palestinian refugee, I will respond to you on this, that the Zionist movement is a racist movement, and it's a fascist movement, and it's a European movement. The Zionist movement was built in the West, which mean that the Zionist movement, it's a colonial movement, and which mean as well that Israel is a European, US imperialist colony in the region over our land and over the expenses of now 6 million Palestinian refugees and also 6 million of Palestinians who live under the occupation, either in 1948 occupied Palestinian land or in West Bank, the sieged West Bank, and where our people there face all tools and all ways of fascist repressions and direct assassinations from European white, mostly settlers actually, who are killing our people today in Hebrew and in Al-Quds. And as well, everyone knows the case of Gaza, where our people have been sieged for more than 10 years. And even though they are steadfast and they are building the resistance movement in all forms of the resistance movement. So this responds to this question, because this mayor, he is not the fan of the Zionist movement. He's a Zionist himself. and he's part of the Zionist movement. And that's lead us to the discussion that, yes, Israel as a colony, but then the leadership of Israel and all of these ways of tools and funding and all means of funding that Germany and all EU and the United States is playing this role since the 1948 and even before. This is a direct investment, like in the blood and in the killing and torturing of the Palestinian people. And in the same time, this funds who goes mostly from taxpayers, this sponsoring that there is today 6 million Palestinian refugees who live and exist in refugee camps in Lebanon and Syria and Jordan. And even now, we have a big Palestinian community who came as refugees, second and third time of refugees, and they are now in Germany, Sweden, and in Europe and all over the world. And we are the real example, the alive example about Nakba. I am a third generation of Palestinian who my grandparents left Palestine during the ethnic cleansing in 1948. So I think like this is how I can start, and we can see great examples today in Germany, like the attack on the demo was happening under this the slogan, in the same time attacking boycott activists who work and campaigned within the boycott movement and the BDS movement. They have been sent to courts in Germany. Uh, I heard once a Jewish ex-Israeli comrade. He's anti-Zionist and he's for the liberation. He's in favor of the liberation of all Palestine and right of return. He said to me once that Germany is becoming more Zionist than Israel itself, because I will never be arrested as an Israeli if I am campaigning for BDS in Tel Aviv, but I will be sent to court in Germany, and this is what's going on. So this system in Germany is not just Zionist, but it's still Zionist and anti-Semitic as well. And we see it how they are ready to attack Jewish people, just if those Jewish people have a certain opinion on their state, let's say, as Israel is called itself as the Jewish state, which is also lead us to another discussion that why it's okay to recognize Israel and Jewish state and ISIS cannot have an Islamic state. Why Muslims cannot have a state and Jewish can have a state. So we are not looking for a state actually, and we are not looking for a religious state. That's why we lead us to the main topic that you are organizing this event behind. And I think this is like great and progressive, and I see it as a way of confrontation within all of these campaigns that you are receiving and we are receiving as a solidarity movement and activists within the Palestinian movement in Europe. So this leads us to we struggle as Palestinians from the beginning for free state, for free Palestine from the river to the sea, the slogan of the event, for all people, for equality and justice and dignity. And this was stated in the PLO Charter in 1946 and even the one in 82. No, sorry, the one in 1668. That instead that we struggle as Palestinians for one democratic Palestine from the river to the sea, where all people can live equally, regardless of their religion, regardless of their sexuality. And I think it showed a very progressive and shows also the inspiration of the Palestinian movement that faced this catastrophe in an ethnic cleansing. And then when they mobilized themselves, the first proposal they proposed to the international community and to the people and to the Palestinian people, that building for future a democratic Palestine where all people can be equal based on your citizenship, based on your equality and contribution within the society. And this is not based on your blood and your religion. So
normally, Mohammed, this slogan, at least in Germany, I know, is linked to Hamas. And so you are saying this is the history of this slogan is much longer and older than the upcoming of Hamas. So if I understand you correctly, it's like going back to the beginning of the resistance movement, not the beginning, because even before 48, we had a very strong resistance movement in Palestine. But we're talking about the after the invasion in 48 and the declaration of sovereignty of the Israeli state. But you're talking about the time when the PLO was founded and the liberation movement had this slogan and the idea of having fighting for a country or fighting for a state which is democratic and independent for all the people origined from this. So is this the history of the slogan and the understanding of the resistance movement far before the Hamas was on the in history? So they were not even founded.
Yes, I mean, linking everything with Hamas today, this is done by the Zionist movement. This is just a way that even it's a stupid and reactionary way because people don't buy it anymore. Huh? The people knows, people have access today to social media, to knowledge, to information, and we are living in a different world. So claiming that everything is started with Hamas in the last 20, 25 years, this is the and sorry to say this, but it's very stupid, and it's not something that we need to discuss. The history of the Palestinian resistance, as you mentioned, even started before 1948. It started when the colonial movement over Palestine started, and even though it started before, if we can go deep in the history, even during the Ottoman like empire colonialism over the lands of Palestine, and our people have been struggling for their liberation since we existed and over this land. The indigenous people of Palestine, they are all of the time struggling for free Palestine, and even we don't call it a state. We don't call it even a nation. We call it a homeland. Palestine for us is our homeland, and this is how we understand how this understanding with our relation with the land, with the soul of the land, with the people, with the nature, with the environment. We are the one who have the poems and the folklore and the traditional dance and the original food, and that's even the Zionist movement is stealing this today. And also, this is what very well known. I don't need to explain as well. So the Zionist movement is based on plunder, based on colonialism, stealing the wealth of the people. They're stealing our food. They start from hummus until the natural gas. So, and in both, in both stealing, we can see how Europe benefited from this. This is stolen gas, natural gas from Palestine, from Haifa shores, and this the wealth of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian refugees, even those who are recognized as migrants in Germany, and the right wing in Germany complain because they say, oh, we are paying these people social welfare and they don't deserve this we should give it only to the white German people. No, man, this welfare that you are giving, this is from the stolen Palestine and from the stolen wealth from the colonies of the West. So, and we can see how we can see hummus today in every supermarket where Lidl and Aldi and all of these companies are benefiting from this. And we see also how white privileged societies can provide a free and cheap gas warming the houses, and our people living under tents until today, not even in Ain Hilwi camps, but today we have a big Palestinian community living in tents in Greece, and this is over Europe. So as a proof to this denial of the Palestinian people doesn't exist, we have Palestinian refugees who are recognized as refugees by European courts and by European asylum services because they exist because of the Nakba and the establishing of the so-called State of Israel.
Mm-hmm. So if we go back to the slogan and the meaning behind it, you were saying the people, the homeland of the Palestinians, the people of Palestine. A lot of people might ask, but who are the people of Palestine? Can you say something about this? Because a lot of people think if Palestinians talk about the people of Palestine, they only mean Muslim Arabs, not Christians, not Jews, and or even they might even have themselves this picture that there is a fight between Jews and Arabs or Jews and Muslims in Palestine. So what would you say about this? Is this slogan, does it mean that Palestine should be, is it a fight between Jews and Muslims?
Even these questions that when people will ask who is the Palestinian, I think this is a very colonial question. We are a people like any other people. Huh? And when we say Arabs and Jewish, this is very incorrect because we have Palestinians Jewish, are Muslims and Christians. We have all that. We are just a normal people. We are different. Even we are very diverse. We are not just a normal people. We are a very rich and diverse society. There is a Palestinian Jewish political prisoners. He is one of the longest Palestinian political prisoners serving in Israeli jails. His name Nader Sadaqa. He is a Jewish Palestinians. German people need to know about Nader Sadaqa. He is an example of Palestinian resistance. Even that, if I will go further in this, during the 70s and 80s, there is Israelis, Jewish white Israelis who participated even in the armed resistance, and they were sent to prison. Once I heard our comrade Khalid Barakat, the one he was deported from Germany, he said in a Berlin, an event, like I think it was in a Nakba or commemorating for Hassan Kanafani martyr anniversary, when he said, I am ready as a Palestinian to be part of a Palestinian or for a brigade for the liberation of Palestine led by a Jewish Israeli comrade. Because our struggle is not for ethnicity, it's not ethnical and not based on blood, it's based on the dignity, equality, and then this is what is opposing colonialism and racism, because colonialism is not just a politics, there is also colonial culture and there is colonial mentality. And Zionism as well, when it's not just a political movement, but in the same time, this political movement dehumanized the Palestinian people. Why do we believe that the soldier, 18 years old in a checkpoint in West Bank, he will assassinate a child? Just in a very cold blood, and he will taking this live on Instagram to show it to his girlfriend. This is happening on social media. Anyone can just Google it and find out about it. What makes a human being does that? Because simply he don't see the Palestinian child as a human. Maybe he see his brother as a human.
That's the dehumanization of even the Israeli occupier soldiers. That's what you're saying. Even he is being dehumanized by that. Yes.
No, he's
by dehumanizing his the violator himself is being dehumanized.
Of course, and this also explained to us, because if we accept the phrase of Israel is a normal state, then we accept that Israel has a normal society, and this is also not correct. I am not in a place where I can explain now how this society is abnormal society, but also we can see the sicknesses of the society. So it's a sick society, and we do believe, and I do personally believe, that we have a mortal mission as a Palestinians, not only to liberate ourselves, but unfortunately and maybe happily to liberate our enemy, because our enemy also is sick in mind, because this accepting equality and accepting Palestinian people and Arab people as equal to others, and this is opposing all the principles of the Zionist movement. Even by the international community, the Zionist movement was recognized officially by the United Nations as a racist movement. So again, by the West, the West dominated within the international movement, and the United Nations recognized the European Western colonial movement as a racist movement, and racism is sick as well. It's a mental health problem.
So let me get back to the point we had before about the ethnical division in the question we pose when we say, is it a conflict between Jews and Muslims or not? And you said this is even a colonial question. And so when I got you properly, then the point is that the ethnical division and the religious division between the people on the ground came by with the Zionist intervention, with the trying to separate people from each other and install the idea of this place has only to be the place of one ethnicity and one religion. So this is the basis of the Zionist ideology, with Herzl, with the first book he published for this movement, which is the Judenstaat, which is the state of the Jews, until today, saying that all of the goal of this movement is only to have one ethnicity and one religion, we don't want to open up the discussion about is it an ethnicity or not, is it a nation or not, the Jews. I think we should keep that in mind for later maybe, or for another webinar. But so Palestine is the homeland of very different people and is a diverse society. And until since we have Zionist movement, the conflict, not between the people, but the conflict has been introduced into this place by from outside. Did I get it right?
Yes, of course. I mean, this is the Zionist project. This is the Zionist creating the Zionist entity, call it Israel, over the land of Palestine. And then even they did it by law when the Knesset recognized, even the Knesset was built over destroyed village, when they recognized Israel as a state only for Jewish people. So even they denied the, let's so-called the Palestinians who are pushed to have Israeli citizenship, they didn't recognize them as a part of the nation.
So does this slogan also... Mm-hmm. Does the slogan also mean, does it mean that Israel as a state is not legitimate? Is that
of course
what is behind this slogan?
Yeah,
saying
Israel is a colony. It's a colony called Israel. It's like a settlement. It's like as a European settlements used to exist in Congo, or in South Africa, or in the Philippines, or in Indonesia, or until today in many other states and islands. It's called Israel. Who is the Israeli settlers? Where they are coming from? They are coming from North Europe, from the United States, from Canada. What brings a guy from Vancouver, a white guy, to go to Hebron and to say, I am from here? I mean, yeah. Our people in Hebron, even
very
if they are Muslims now,
strange ideology maybe about
yes,
history.
And all the functional, or the base of this establishment, that so-called state, even when they speak in the United Nations or in universities, in a very academic and scientific institutions, they said Israel is like a biblical
entity, or
like it's a biblical promise. So this is the legitimacy. So does Europe accept, for example, for Muslims today who exist in Europe, to say, oh, we have a Quran, something called us, that Europe for us, we should colonial Europe today as Palestinians and as migrants communities who are based here?
I
Or
think
they are calling us for integration and assimilation and different kinds of proposals. So why you are coming from all far the place? Even I was shocked when I visited South Africa as a Palestinian refugee, and then I learned that even the Dutch 400 years ago, when they came, they said, oh, this was a promised land by Bible as well. So always this white colonial Western movement is using this religious stupid phrase until today. But this is not a scientific, it's not an academic, it's not an historic, it's just a stupid bullshit. And people shouldn't buy it because it's...
Yes, thank you for the clear words. And I think most of the attendants of this session will share the idea that this kind of irrational, spooky visions of, I don't know, ideas to go somewhere and see a land and say, this is mine because another power, wherever it should be, has promised it to me, is quite out of discussion.
Yeah, but not even that. This promise will tell you then you can do ethnic cleansing, you can do occupation, you can imprison more than 6,000 Palestinian political prisoners, you can torture Palestinians, you can assassinate kids, you can imprison kids today. There is more than 200 Palestinian child sentenced with high years of sentence. They are in security prisons. This international hypocrite community doesn't speak about. We don't see European NGOs and child care and family care institutions that saying, come on, we are funding a state that arresting children. We're not speaking politics here. Accepted in Germany to arrest kids and put them in criminal and security, high level of security, and sentence 14 years old child and 16 years old child for 20 years because he throws stones.
But Mohammed, let us go back to the history maybe, because in the first part of the session, I would like to draw the attention more to the history of the resistance and the history of the slogan and the history of the perspectives of the resistance movement, and also about on the changes that have been taking place. And how this attempt has been changed. So parts of the movement have been throwing away this slogan and accepting some other solutions. And therefore, today, or let's say, if we look back at the time in the 60s or the 70s, then you said it before, it was very much accepted that the PLO, the resistance movement, had a legitimate cause and was absolutely in the right to fight for liberation, and also that Zionism was an imperialist and colonial attempt. But then something changed, that we are today in a position, even in the movement, that we have to argue a lot for this slogan or for this idea of the liberation. What has happened in the history so that this changed, that the idea of one Palestine was vanished kind of out of the mind of the resistance and the supporters?
I think this has very much to do with what happened in the entire worldwide, in the whole world. So when we say like we were the Palestinian revolution that started, let's say, in 67, modern Palestinian revolution, as opposing to the Arab like traditional regimes catastrophe, and then called for resistance and armed resistance and mass mobilization for our people, for liberation and for democratic Palestine, was going at the same time as well with other national liberation movements that will exist and struggle for liberation in Asia, in Latin America, and in Africa, and all around the globe. So the Palestinian movement was part of this international uprising, and we cannot separate it from there. But also as well, to be like very specific and realistic, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we are a people. We are a population with different classes, with different ideologies, with different religions, with different. You have, So the Palestinian National Liberation Movement from the beginning was mostly dominated by the Palestinian right wing and by the Palestinian bourgeoisie that played a later more bigger role to control the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, and even it went further that it played a big role for the destruction of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement and its institutions, which was the main tool and basis for the Palestinian resistance movement to organize and to mobilize the masses, and where the masses was playing a very important role in a decision and in drawing the history. And that's why the idea of democratic Palestine was very much accepted, because people was involved in this discussion and in this human discussion that's explaining to the people why our struggle is for justice, equality, and dignity, and all of this. And also because we're speaking about population who just in that time faced ethnic cleansing and was living in tents for the past 10 to 15 to 20 years. But yes, our national liberation movement is as the German society and any other societies, as you have the social democrat and the liberals and the new liberals and the Christian Democrat and the religious and the far right wing and the fascist, we as well have very similar differences. We have the Palestinian left movement, we have the Palestinian traditional right wing movement, and then we have the Palestinian Islamic traditional right-wing movement. And all of these forces, we believe that we must be united within the national liberation movement and to reach the main goals that we agreed on in the charters, the PLO that you mentioned in 46 and in 64 and 68. And then later it was more obvious the changing and the separation within the Palestinian National Liberation Movement when in 73 the PLO, let's say, and mainly was Fatah and the DFLP gave a proposal to the PNC, the Palestinian National Council, to decide on accepting building Palestinian entity over any liberated land of Palestine, and they call it the 10 points proposal, let's say, or the temporary solution, which is not permanent, but this is the temporary solution. And
the first step being taken for the liberation of the whole of Palestine, like the first step, not that was not the long-term goal, but the 10-point program was like we take part of Palestine and then go further.
no, it was the long time goal, but they lied on the Palestinian people.
Okay.
And find it a way that to start within this, and then to build the new status quo, which is we agree to have a Palestinian entity. And this interest was mostly the interest of the Palestinian bourgeoisie, because in that time also the Palestinian bourgeoisie, Palestine used to be a very rich country before 1948, and many other like neighbor Arab countries like Lebanon and Syria, they used to live in Palestine and work in Palestine, and there was a market and business. So when the Nakba came and happened, not only poor Palestinians went refugees, but also as well the Palestinian capital who went to Lebanon and to mainly to Jordan. So if we want to analyze the economy today in Jordan, 80 to 90% of the economy owned by Palestinian bourgeoisie. And in Lebanon as well, we can see the investment of this Palestinian bourgeoisie, and also within the multinational corporations that working and cooperating. So then we have this new liberal Palestinians, bourgeoisie classes dominating the movement, and they are clever enough that they know that it's easier to use the traditional right wing, which is Fatah, the populist. And they have this specific relation and cooperation, and from there the destruction of our national liberation movement start today. And from in my opinion, after 73 until today, we don't have a Palestinian revolution. The Palestinian revolution, the revolution itself, was a very, very short period, condensed, where we had the most important documents, political analysis, the vision of the future of Palestine. And this was destructed in 73. And from there, when we start, not we, but when the movement went to finding solutions and way backs and agreements and peace solutions and start liquidating the cause, we ended up with Oslo in shortly, So within this, Madrid and everything happened during that time. As Sadat went to Israel and did the peace agreement, Camp David, and then Jordan, and then Oslo, and before that Madrid, and then Oslo. And like Madrid, it's a very interesting, and I think it's more important than Oslo, because it was an agreement where you had all Arab states was there, even Syria.
Tell us a little bit about Madrid. What was that? Was it a meeting, or I think a lot of attendants will not know.
It was the peace initiative was done by this was actually the known peace initiative that the US is working on and bringing the Palestinians and the Israelis with the Arabs together. So they went to Madrid, they organized it, where Shamir was there, representative of the Arab nation, and at that time they refused to have Palestine as a delegation. So then the Palestinians went under Jordan, within the Jordanian delegation, where Saeb Arikat was there representing himself and never the Palestinian people. And in this conference, after it, then Fatah was surprised. Even Arafat, even Saeb Arikat was surprised, because then they say that we have been organizing in Oslo. So they were playing in two. So the Oslo was not discussed and to the Palestinian people. No, it was surprised. But the famous one was Madrid, where but also where Arafat in that time, condemned armed resistance, and later I think in 96, when he just canceled the Palestinian, the PLO, the national charter, just canceled, and that's from where the Palestinian Authority started.
Because in the national charter, we have the very clear statement that first the partition of Palestine is not accepted, and also the liberation movement will kind of fight for the whole of Palestine, for the whole land, not for just part of it. And so this, you say, beginning with 1973 was kind of dissolved, and step by step in Madrid. Which year was Madrid again?
91.
91. So
92.
It's like with coming up with Oslo,
yeah,
slowly, surely. And so if I got you properly, you're saying that firstly, the international crisis of the revolutionary movement has also been seen in Palestine. Secondly, the class conflict is reality, and therefore it should also show itself in the national liberation movement, because the whole of society has part of it, and all the different interests of the different classes, the working class and the bourgeois class, is being represented in the movement, and that the bourgeois class had the interest of, let's say, cooperating, some would say collaborating, but with the Zionist movement, with the imperialist countries, to find a solution for themselves to be able to do what is the profit for the bourgeois class, Palestinian bourgeois class? What is the statement on that? Why would they do this?
So
because they don't have the country, and did they think if they have one part of Palestine, then they are able to build up kind of a national organization for their own capital, or what is the idea behind it?
Mm-hmm. So also to be correct on this, yes, there was all of this happening, but in the same time, we have to keep remembering that during that time, in the same time, the Zionist movement and Israel was attacking all the time the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, even attacking Fatah, assassinating very important and very patriotic national leaders from Fatah movement to reach this agreement from the front. All of the Palestinians, intellectuals, writers, writers, artists, they were attacking heavily the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. They were making us busy all the time with wars, attacking Lebanon, attacking the camps. Before 82, there was a war in 80, and there was always attacks and invasions, small ones, and attack here and or assassination and all of this.
So the
So there was
movement was
always
not under
also as
pressure.
well, of course. And in the same time, in Europe, where our movement was also based and we have existence, Europe was forcing and attacking the Palestinians. Even Israel itself, it's played a role inside Europe, and they assassinated a very, very important Palestinian intellectuals and community leaders and academics. Majid Abu Sharara was assassinated in Italy. Another comrade was assassinated. Many, like real I can say like tens. And I'm not exaggerating. Was assassinating in Greece, in Belgium, in Netherlands.
There was also a lot of repression against activists here in Germany. We had a lot of bans and arrests here.
Yeah. So what I have here with me, this is a very interesting book called The Strategy for Liberation of Palestine. It was published by the PFLP in 1969. And I will just read what is the context of it. The introduction, the founding document of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Strategy for the Liberation of Palestine, introduction, importance of political thought, who are our enemies, who are our forces that we can cooperate with in the revolution, who are the Palestinian petite bourgeoisie, who are the Palestinian bourgeoisie, organizing and mobilizing for Palestine within the revolutionary forces around the world. Force of the revolution on the Arab level, force of the revolution in the world level, facing imperialist technology superiority. This is in 96, talking about facing imperialist technology superiority. This document is very important because it was written in a very simple language, and it was any Palestinian, working class, peasant, a refugee who is able to read it and to understand who is our enemies. And when he answered this very important question and very complicated question, he answered it in a very simple way. The imperialist power, the Zionist movement, and the Arab reactionary regimes. It's very clear who is our enemy. And fourth, he explained how the Palestinian bourgeoisie will play its role to become part of the enemy camp in order to seek its benefits. And this answer as well your question about what the Palestinian bourgeoisie benefit or what they want. It's not always that they are doing this because they have an end goal, right? But they are doing this because they have to be part of this economical international system. They are doing this to stay, have their capital in Jordan. They are doing this to still can have contract for one multinational company they own that can establish a gas pipeline from Georgia or Nigeria until the Netherlands, for example. So this is what they are playing this role. And in the same time, they have interest to build their capital in a state and to have all of this privilege and socially privilege and to create, to have this control part of the society where from there they can go internationally as any other bourgeoisie that exists in every other normal society. But what is the danger is as well that democratic Palestine is not only dangerous for the Zionist movement, but also dangerous for this reactionary movement because this reactionary Palestinian bourgeoisie prefer to cooperate with the Zionists and have one state solution, which is, doesn't know who is this democratic Palestine or you name it, Israel. They don't care for them. A state solution that where they can join their interest and share this capital and share this interest. And from there, I think we can create a very dangerous colonial state in the Middle East, in the region, and in the world, and could be very fascist because sometimes we can see how this Palestinian Authority today use fascist rhetoric like songs like "My blood is Palestinian," blah blah blah. This is opposing all the culture of resistance that Palestinians pay blood for it, paid their money. The first founders of the Palestinian revolution, it wasn't any states or any regime, it was the Palestinian refugees, the freedom fighters, the Fidaiyin in the camps in Lebanon and in Syria and in Jordan. They were going and knocking the chicks. It wasn't homes even. And then you can see grandmothers and women who just left Palestine. They give all what they have of gold or whatever money they have at home and they contributed in the Palestinian revolution because they are the classes who have interest for liberation. And of course, not this Palestinian bourgeoisie because all of them, they have British passports and American passports and houses in California and in Chicago, exactly from where the settlers are coming from. And in Palestine, they work together. So that's why we say democratic Palestine is an interest for working class movement. It's an interest for all smashed classes in all societies. It's interest for the migrants who are abused daily by white supremacists, Zionist, fascists. All examples you have in Tel Aviv streets. Not all. In Germany, you can find white supremacists. But there you can find white supremacists, fascists, Nazis, and at the same time, Zionists spitting on black people, migrants, and refugees coming to Israel and seeking asylum. Where the international community is from this. So any solution for liberation, two-state solution is a racist apartheid solution. And this cannot be imposed by Western colonial power like the EU and the United States, even though they do funding. They did funding for 30 years, trying to whitewash all the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. And today everyone is saying this doesn't work. And the Palestinian people still fight for resistance and still support our national liberation movement. We have armed resistance in Gaza, not because Hamas is strong in Gaza or the PFLP is strong in Gaza. We have it there because the people of Gaza, they need armed resistance. And the people of Gaza, they are the one who is building armed resistance, and they are the armed resistance. When we have martyrs from that party or that party, they are Palestinian martyrs to belong to families. They have story and history, and they love life, and they love to exist, and they struggle for equality and freedom. We are not, we don't have fantasy of
what you're suggesting is that the separation in the movement is not going alongside the parties or different.
Not separation in the movement.
Okay.
This is not separation in the movement. We have different movements, and that's where the European left, for example, our international comrades who are supporting Palestine, they shouldn't be shy to support the left in Palestine.
Why
and you go and support the PA. Who support the Palestinian Authority today? Who fund the Palestinian Authority? It's the Social Democrat of Europe.
Okay.
Right? So social democrat and leftist and even so-called parliamentary radical left like the Linke and other political parties, they advocate to support the corrupted Palestinian Authority. They support corruption in Palestine, and they support right wing in Palestine, and they support traditional, sectarian, tribal mentality movement. But when it comes to Germany, they struggle for sexual right and eco-friendly rights for the environment.
Okay. The last point you made about the working class in Palestine is that because the bourgeois class is not able to kind of be the vanguard of the movement and the national liberation, only the masses and only the working class can be. They are the ones who are firstly interested in the real liberation, national liberation and sovereignty. In the second, not only in a one-state solution, but in a liberated sense of a one-state solution. Because a one-state solution sometimes could also mean, or sometimes it seems to me that people mean this, kind of a apartheid state. It's one state, but still you have the masses of the people being suppressed and being kept in the down and exploited. So these two goals are the goals of the masses of the people, and only the mass movement can kind of put pressure on all the other parts of the society, of the Palestinian society, to be part of the national liberation movement. Is this still possible to go this way?
Of course. I mean, our people are going further than the national liberation movement and what so-called political parties. Our people in Palestine, in West Bank, in Gaza, in 48, they are the one who is leading and steadfast and building this Palestinian culture and infrastructure and the houses, and fight on daily basis and on daily confrontation with the settlers and with the Zionist army and with everything. Of course, this is still possible. We need we need a new generation of Palestinian people to step in as well. We need to change within the movement as well. There is a struggle internally that must be done, and the Palestinian people have to do. And as well, the Palestinian diaspora have to be involved and engaged again, and play its role in the national liberation movement and in the struggle, because one of the destruction that Oslo agreement and this changes happening within the PLO and the destruction of the PLO and building the Palestinian Authority, that recognizing the 6 million Palestinians refugees who live outside Palestine as non-Palestinians. I am in Europe recognized as a stateless person. So bringing this Palestinian, and even we were isolated from the unions, from the movement, from voting, from everything. And even we were pushed to a level that we have to be in solidarity with our people in Palestine. And then we have to be part of the solidarity movement, for example, if we have a community in Europe or in the United States, but not this understanding of, no, we have to pay equal position with our people who live under occupation. And we have even a higher mission that we have to play a role to protect our people who live under occupation and under Zionist repression and fascism. Because who protect today, when we had the Palestinian resistance operating worldwide and practicing all forms of struggle, Israel wasn't able to arrest 6,000 Palestinian people. Israel wasn't sentencing Palestinian kids. Israeli soldiers wasn't assassinating Palestinians, women in the streets, and pregnant women just shot to fulfill their sicknesses. They were afraid of doing this because there was a response, and they know that they will pay a price for attacking Palestinians. Today, sadly, within this international colonialist movement, with Arab reactionary regimes and the repression and oppression we face from the Western states, especially like Germany, we are so cheap as Palestinians today. We can be killed we are numbers, and this shouldn't be acceptable. And in order this shouldn't be acceptable, we as Palestinians, especially in diaspora, have to play our role again and to reclaim our voice within our national liberation movement, and to go further even and to isolate this corrupted PA, unlegitimate, never elected so-called authority in Palestine, that they are only doing security coordination with the Zionist movement and attacking the Palestinian resistance in Gaza and pretending that they are the one who is building the state for Palestinians. And also we have to advocate And I call everyone who is here or listening to us. This is a serious topic. European left today must support one free Palestine from the river to the sea, but more than that, they should stop funding the Palestinian, what the so-called Palestinian Authority. It's a corrupted authority. 3 weeks ago, there was a protest in Ramallah for people just calling for a protest against corruption. Before the protest happened, more than 20 of them, they were all arrested. All of them, they are lawyers, activists, respected within our communities, and they are all of them, those lawyers, in the same time they struggle to support Palestinian political prisoners. This authority today is a tool to attack our people, and they are getting fund even and loans by the Israeli state, so-called state. So here there is a serious investment. It's like we as a Palestinian, if we have two Palestinian capitalists and we start funding the fascist right wing in Germany, it's fine? It's normal? No, it shouldn't.
Maybe it would be accepted from the right wing government. But
yes, but from the people who shouldn't be accepted, and from the solidarity movement and from the social movement, this shouldn't be accepted, right?
Mohammad, before we come back to the mass organization in Palestine and in the diaspora, I want to link it to one question which was posed about something you said a little bit before. It's a kind of specific question. You were talking about the Palestinian capital in Jordan, and a friend is asking if you could name some, if you could tell us how we can see this capital in Jordan. Is it visible? Do you have names?
Let's start that 80% or more maybe of the so-called Jordanian population, they are Palestinians. So this is first. So any potential of Jordanian businessman or capital company, they are originally Palestinian capital. Second, I think I can name like the banks institutions. The Arab Bank, that is one of the main bank of the Jordanian economy. It's owned by a Jordanian citizenship.
So what is it about this Jordanian Palestinian citizenship? Is it Palestinians who went to Jordan after 48, or how does that work? Did they get Jordanian passports, or?
Until 67 war, Jordan was controlling the West Bank.
The West Bank.
Right, and the Egyptian regime was controlling Gaza. And they lost these two lands in the 67 war. But before than that, so during also that war, you have a big mass refugee movement that moved. But also before this, before of the war, because it was one kind, there was no borders between the West Bank and Amman, for example. So, so then they used all of these Palestinians, potential Palestinian skills, people, teachers, whatever language, and in order to build the new kingdom was established after, Sykes-Picot and building the Jordanian, like these colonies and bringing these kings from the Arab desert and appointing them by the British colony.
So the king himself is not the main capitalist of Jordan, but there
are... or nothing, and even he is not from Jordan, and even he don't belong to the original indigenous Jordanian tribes that they are in Jordan. He's from Saudi Arabia somehow. It wasn't Saudi Arabia at that time.
Okay, so maybe we could then, not today, because...
So manufacture state to protect the longest borders with the state of Israel, and in the same time to liquidate the biggest Palestinian collective diaspora in one place, that in Jordan, and to recognize them as a Jordanian citizenship, and even to whitewash this Palestinian capital that went out of Palestine as a Jordanian capital, and then engage it to support this fascist king that oppressing the Jordanian people until today.
Today, if we wanted to understand what is Palestinian capital in Jordan, we have to go into history and look at it very closely, how it became Jordan capital.
Yeah, but this is if someone, is very interested to make a PhD about it. But when we say also as well, like the Palestinian capital, yes, it's very interesting topic, but like the Palestinian capital, it's also linked with the Arab capital. And when we say Arab capitals, then we can speak about the Gulf countries. This, when we mention in this book the reactionary Arab regimes, that they are the one. Until today, we can see Emirates 2 weeks ago just signed the peace agreement with the Zionist state of Israel. So this Arab regimes also, in the same time, we mentioned that when we had these changes within the national liberation movement, and at the same time there was a heavy attack by the Zionist movement, it was also a heavy attack by all Arab regimes, deporting Palestinians, kicking out leadership, shutting fund, oppressing, blah, blah, imprisoned activists. We had thousands of Palestinians who went to the Jordanian and Lebanese and Syrian prisons after 48 for the reason of mobilizing back for Palestine. It was a long struggle to be able to build the Palestinian revolution in Jordan and in Lebanon, in Syria, within the camps. In every camp you have in Lebanon, for example, security office, intelligence from the Lebanese state, which is like, giving fines of the people, not allowing them to transform their tents to sheikhs. They did this by struggle, and then from sheikhs to blockhouses. This was by struggle and by revolution, even in 70 against the so-called Lebanese army.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is this constant daily struggle for every Palestinian today where we exist. If we say the situation in the prisons today in 2020, that there is a library inside the prison and the prisoners, they have a mattress and sheet, this because there was hunger strikes for many years for mobilizing, for having these rights. Every single right our people has from 1948 until today, it come out by a heavy and long struggle and cost blood and power.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we can see, if we really want to understand the whole history of the struggle, then it's not enough to have this webinar. We have to go into it for a longer term, and who really is interested and who really wants to get engaged into this movement and to support the Palestinian case.
But at the same time, it's very simple.
Exactly.
Because in 1948,
thank you for
saying colonials came to Palestine. They did ethnic cleansing.
On the one hand, it is very simple because we can very easily see the relation between the violator and the violated. It's not very difficult to understand.
Not only that, we can see the relation of the violator with the original violator in Europe and in the United States, and we can see how Israel is playing a role in South Africa. It used to, and now it is in a different forms as well. Or in Latin America, the day after the coup in Bolivia against Morales, the day after, the security department of the Bolivian state have a direct, again, like renewed the direct relationship, and they ask for a security support fighting anti-terrorist troops. Why you need anti-terrorist troops in Bolivia? And why they are Israelis? Why not Americans?
They have experienced a lot.
Exactly, and this is how you have, for example, universities in Germany that they are funding this research, that they are doing tests of this research over our people. So we will not accept to be cheap to that level, that our blood and our souls and our history and our land to be just a test tool for a European or a Western colonial institution to make a research for more advanced military or economy, and for capitalist companies and multinational corporations that creating drones and all of this military.
Absolutely. So let me correct. On the one hand, this is very, very easy to understand the case and understand the cause of liberation movement because all of what you just said. On the other hand, I think it's important to note that if people want to get engaged, it's not just enough to look at it very superficially. We have to know the history and know the contradictions between the classes and among the classes and also among the society for a better understanding of the next steps that we have to take. I would like to turn the seminar a little bit more into what is the perspective of the slogan and of the resistance movement, if we put it like the slogan, Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, so a one-state solution and a liberated Palestine, what kind of Palestine we can imagine. I even have a question from the chat, and I would like to read it out for you. It's saying that the BDS movement calls for the right to return of all Palestinian refugees to a unified democratic Palestine that is open for all groups regardless of religion. What would this practically look like if there are about 7 million Palestinians outside of Palestine, Israel? Would they be all able to have enough space in Palestine, Israel, next to all other Palestinians and Israelis already living there? I think this question is therefore important because it is like always the first reaction you get if we're talking about the right to return of Palestinian refugees, and also about the one-state solution and the fear of a Zionist movement that this would mean the end of the state of Israel as a Jewish state. So is there a reason to be scared of anything if we imagine people are coming back home and living next to each other? Is it possible to imagine this solution as the BDS movement, but not only the BDS movement, a lot of other groups and initiatives are also suggesting?
I don't think the BDS is providing a solution, because the BDS it's calling for demands, and that's it. They are not saying how Palestine should be and where those Palestinian refugees have to go back. They say this is a protected right by the international community, right of return.
So only demanding for the right to have, but not really to.
And they are not in that position to propose, and not me as well, personally as Mohammed, to propose that, and to speak on behalf of the Palestinian people what the national liberation movement and not or how our people view Palestine. But practically, to answer the question on terms of the space and this kind of things, to make it very simple, to travel from Frankfurt to Düsseldorf on the highway, so you see in all the way countryside, right? All Germany, it's very few population compared to the space where people live. In Palestine, it's exactly like this. Palestine, the land compared to the land and to the inhabitant, maybe I am not correct. I am not 100% sure. I'm not specialized on this information, but not more than 30% of the land of Palestine is inhabited. And another information is 80% of the destroyed villages where the people left, it's still destroyed villages and empty. Like the place where I come from, they make it national park today for migrant birds coming from Europe to South Africa.
So there is no space problem.
No, I mean, this is Zionist rhetorics. What a space problem. It was never any solution about space. Palestine, we are a normal land with a normal society, with a normal people. Don't imagine Palestine as a one city group of people living inside, and all they have to be very similar and look the same and think the same. And this is a very colonial mentally way of thinking. We are a big country. We have natural gas. We have different, geographic environments. We have desert in Palestine. We have high mountains in Palestine. That snow stayed all the year. We have the sea, we have river, we have culture, we have indigenous food. We are normal people.
So there is no real problem.
No, there is. It's a Zionist problem.
Okay, but not a material kind of problem because of place, space, or richness.
No. It's just the Zionist movement material problem, and the one who's funding this, colonial machine that's still going on in Palestine.
Let me put, I haven't seen it yet in the chat, but maybe I can just add another question, which is a little bit more sensitive. And I know that for a lot of people, especially for Germans, it is a very difficult question. We will not talk about all of this history of the Holocaust and the reasons why Zionists are instrumentalizing for legitimation of the state of Israel. But the question always is being posed, or a lot of times, that for whom will this state be? If there is a liberation movement, and if this liberation movement is saying we are fighting for the complete land from the river to the sea, what then will happen to those Israelis today living there?
If they accept to live in equality and justice with the Palestinians, equality, yeah, with the Palestinians, they are welcome. They came migrants to Palestine and refugees before 48, escaping from Germany, from the Nazi, and they were welcome in Palestine. We welcome migrants. We don't have a right wing in the, very deep movement within a state that is oppressing. And this culture is coming from Europe, actually.
Maybe a lot of people were expecting us to talk a lot about this. Kind of a stupid question I posed, but you answered it so easily and so quickly. So maybe we can just stop talking about the stupid questions, because
I mean, it's a question. It's not a stupid question, and I understand.
no, I posed it.
No, I know. And I understand when people ask it or a fear. I understand it, I understand it more if it's a new generation or a teenager in Israel. He have a conscience and he's thinking about his existence and what's going on. And he answer or he asked himself or asked me this question. I find it more interesting than have it a fear from a German. Because when it comes from a German, this comes for his personal problem that I have nothing to do with it. If you have a weakness and if you have this guilt against Jewish people, don't practice it over Palestinian people. Go and solve your problem with the Jewish people. Stop being anti-Semitic in reality, in practice. Solve this, historical question. This is your internal problem. I live in Europe since 10 years. I see anti-Semitic and Islamophobia and homophobia every day that I never saw in Lebanon, even though I live under high level of the so-called development. So
Yes.
if there is a problem exists within the German society, don't make the Palestinian people to pay the price for it, and we will not accept to pay the price for this. We accept to pay to be human. We accept to fight for dignity, to struggle for equality, for future, for justice, for development, for knowledge, for sharing, for opening. But we will not accept to pay the price of the colonial power that are trying to throw their problems or over the Palestine. And that's why today we see the far-right Zionist movement in Israel, they have very close relationship with the far-right Nazi movement in Europe.
Absolutely.
In Poland, even in Germany itself. So what this contradiction that a German court will prosecute a Jewish activist that calling for the boycott for Israel, and at the same time a Likud and Netanyahu party building a relationship with the Nazi far-right wing party that calling for killing people in Germany. I did it a few months 1 year ago. There was 11 martyr or 10 martyr was killed in Hanau. I don't know if I pronounced the name of the city very well. I was in Berlin in that day, and when I saw this news at night, I thought I will wake up the day after and see Germany is burning. There's a serious problem in the street. I woke up in the morning and people were having brunch and breakfast and normal life. It wasn't even very important in the news, and it took like 24 hours until people managed to march in a small demo in Berlin.
Absolutely.
So this
yesterday we had a strong demonstration.
Our society, we are very much advanced. In the 36, 37 revolution in Palestine, the women freedom fighters were leading us. In 60s and 80s, the Palestinian woman was leading the Palestinian revolution and the Palestinian society.
Even in the Intifada, the women were very much in the front.
Now and until today, we have women in prisons. We have a feminist movement exist in Palestine and struggle internally and socially for better Palestinian society and for better future for the new generations. We have all this type of movement because it's a historic movement, belong to a historic society that exists in his place for thousands of years as an indigenous and all normal people that moved. We are very diverse. We came also, many of us Palestinians originally from Yemen, Egypt. We don't care. We care about equality and justice and don't use a stupid biblic promise to justify my killing, and then it's normal for a very high developed state that went to the moon and to the NASA and they are building hotels in the moon, and then they said, okay, but the God promised them in this land. Yeah, then we will say the God promised us for Palestine and Europe.
Okay.
And then you cannot you cannot speak out against ISIS in Europe. because ISIS is not
the same.
It's not different than the Zionist movement. They burn Palestinians, ISIS burned Muslims and Christians.
To come back to the question of who is then going to live in liberated Palestine.
You are welcome.
Yeah, oh, thank you very much. I think I will. I am very much looking forward to visit Palestine at some stage, but I think it will be very difficult for me to get there. Anyway, still, even today we can see that there is so much active among the young Israeli youngsters. It's not a majority, but there are young people and leftists and different kind of movements who are joining the movement in the sense of fighting for an equal state with equal rights for all living there. So it's not only coming from one side to say we are going to liberate this land only for us, and then we will expulse all the people having an Israeli passport, which is even therefore stupid, because a lot of Palestinians today, the 48 Palestinians have the Palestinian Israeli passport, but also Jewish Israelis or secular Israelis are now joining the movement for a one-state solution for a liberated Palestine. So in a sense, I think it is part of the propaganda of the violators to turn the argument against the liberation movement, to make them weak in the sense that you are the ones who are the planning to violate us. You are the ones who are a danger for the people in Israel, and this is what we are facing also in the support of Palestinian liberation movement here in Germany and in Europe and also in the US. Mohammed, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
You are, okay. Because the video went off, I was, okay. So I think we have been now, I understand you, that this argument is not, there is no reason to answer it from our perspective. There is no reason to answer who is going to live there. It's the choice of those who join the movement or not join the movement. It's the choice of those people who say we are for a democratic, liberated homeland, or no, we want to be the ones who expulse other people, violate other people, are the aggressors. And this is what we see today, is that the settlers movement and the Zionist movement are the ones who aggressively expulsing and putting pressure on the people, Palestinian people, to leave the country, and not the other way around. So maybe it is time to stop letting ourselves being so much under pressure, especially in Germany, by such questions that are in the end, kind of a tool in the hands of the oppressors and the Zionist movement to weaken the resistance movement. I'm not sure if this is fully answered for the attendance of the seminar, but I think we should leave it by this, because we could talk a little bit more about it, like if you want to say anything more about who is then going to live in this country, I don't know. But there is also another question. Still, I would like to use the time to maybe also shed a light on that, which is we know a lot of a big part of the movement, or even the left movement or the human rights movement, are still very much arguing for the two-state solution, are still very much in the under the pressure of the first UN partition plan, which was also then accepted by the Soviet Union, and this also put a lot of pressure on the different parts of the movements to also accept the partition. And until today, a lot of groups, initiatives, etc., are still arguing that a two-state solution is much more reasonable and is accepting a real peace will come out of two states living peacefully beneath each other. Is it reasonable? Is it possible to have a two-state solution?
It's not me to tell this, but it's them. They have to answer this, because this two-state solution was done in 1939, and we are today in 2020. How it's reasonable? It's happening. There is a Palestinian entity, not even a state. There is no Palestinian political prisoners. Israel is accepting this. Forget about the Palestinians. Why always this question need to be for the Palestinians? Why not for the Israelis? Israel does accept two-state solution. They signed Oslo agreement, but do those activists, and so I don't see them as well as a big part of the solidarity movement with Palestine. The part who support this out of good, as they support the solidarity movement, like as they are part of solidarity movement for Palestine, because they see this is the Palestinian official position, and we cannot go further than this. And I think also they are mistaken in this, and this is a wrong, and this is a big mistake. But the other part who claim to support Palestine, to insist to have a two-state solution, in reality they are supporting Israel existence, and they are not supporting the struggle of the Palestinian people, because they care about the existence of Israel. And that's why they want to make sure that when they say two-state solution, because they know in practice since then until now that this never happened for the Palestinians, but always Israel exists as a colonial fascist state. So when they make sure that all the time to insist that no, this could be a potential solution, they are saving the Israeli state. But I want to comment about what you mentioned as well before of this, and answering the question who lived there. It's not the solidarity movement with Palestine position, and they are not in the place to decide or to think or to be busy to think what is the solution of the Palestinian people or in Palestine will be. This is the Palestinian people and the most vulnerable classes of the Palestinian peoples, the refugees, the working class, the political prisoners movement, the national liberations movement, the unions movement, the people who are struggling daily for Palestine and for Palestinian rights. They are the ones who decide and propose what Palestine and who can live there. And we always struggled for dignity and equality and equal rights. So any assumption, just by assumption, because you want to assume that the Palestinian people will throw the Jewish in the sea, or the Palestinian people, after they will claim, oh, well, it's the solution, but then after the refugees will come, they will make a new ethnic cleansing. And all of this, it's a racist assumptions, because it's just you are assuming that the Palestinian people doesn't believe in equality and justice, and the Palestinian people, they just fantasy killing and practicing this, and we are fascist people, and we are not. So I think this is a very dangerous assumption. And when we insist to say democratic Palestine, and this was from the Fidaiyin, like this, when the Palestinian National Liberation proposed this to the international movement, they proposed it in the time when the Palestinian people had guns in their hands. And this gun wasn't only in Jordan, it was in Brussels and in Amsterdam and in Berlin itself, and it was harming the Zionist movement. So this comes out of dignity, this human solution come out of dignity and strength. The Palestinian people were in a strong position at that time, and that's why we were able to have this proposal to the world, a human proposal. And this showed when the Palestinian people had the power, we easily could be fascist. We can see the form of armed struggle our people participate in. It's not based on ethnically cleansing people and just killing people. And we could easily do that. The Palestinian resistance is strong enough to bomb a school in Israel, but we don't do this. And when the Palestinian resistance decide, it's their decision. But this shows in the practice how the Palestinian resistance is practicing even armed struggle. Armed struggle, it was a tactical tools done. This is how we understand within the national liberation the means of armed struggle. So when our people propose this human proposal, we shouldn't always all the time assume that the negative, and then we have to open a discussion, and then the Palestinians have to justify this. If you have a question regarding what Israel agree on or not, you go and ask the Israelis. Do the Israeli people
So you
today?
just have a
You
look
say,
at reality.
yeah,
I mean,
but you said that there is a growing movement that opposing Israel as an existence and calling for a free Palestine. I disagree with you. Of course, there is people who exist and who struggle within the Israeli society about this, and they are, thrown out of the society. And many of them we see they are coming and living in Brussels and in Berlin, and they are not accepted within that society because it's a racist and fascist based on military participation society and ethnic cleansing, daily ethnic cleansing. Yes, there is a few numbers of people. We wish this will grow movement. We hope that there will be a movement, Jewish movement, joining the Palestinian resistance and even participating in armed struggle. But we can see as well in the West where we have Jewish voices for peace, like in the United States, in Germany, Jewish voices for decolonization and having awareness, because in Europe and in the United States, as a Jewish people, poor classes of Jewish people suffer from racism and fascism and white supremacy alongside with Muslims and LGBT movement and other oppressed communities in Europe that and black people that who are facing daily racism and white supremacy here and struggle. So this struggle goes along with the freedom and the liberation of Palestine. As Israel exists as a fascist state and justified as a colonial state, these forms of oppression will be higher in Europe and in the United States over the poor classes and the working classes and the migrant classes and other oppressed communities. So liberation of Palestine is interest for the liberation of the United States and in Germany and in Holland and everywhere in this world, because it's a higher confrontation with imperialism, higher confrontation with Caterpillar company, higher confrontation with Shell company, higher confrontation with high-tech manufacturing weapons and drones companies that killing Afghans people and protecting the border, so-called protecting the borders from refugees in Greece. All of these oppression tools are used worldwide, is done, and in the settlements in Israel is where I come from. I want to build there my home, and I don't want to build a military factory. If you want to build a military factory, have it in Brussels, have it in Berlin. This is, you do this, and people will struggle there against it. There is anti-war movement there. And also not to be mistaken as well, and sometimes because we focus on this negative relationship within the Zionist movement and in the West, but yes, there is a long history of European colonial settlers movement like the Zionist movement and others, but in the same time, there is long history of resistance in Europe. European white resistance, working class resistance, migrants resistance exists until today. Every single right here was done for the people. It was by long struggle, and that we are proud as Palestinians to learn from and to cooperate with the workers' movements, with the unions movement, with the feminist movement, with the people's rights movement, for the welcoming migrants and refugees movement, because also we want to welcome migrants and refugees in free Palestine. Also, we want equal rights for workers in free Palestine. Also, we want equal rights for migrant workers in free Palestine. And we want equal rights for black people, Palestinians, and other black people, migrant in Palestine. This is what Palestine we dream for to build, which is opposing the settler colonial state like the United States and Canada and Australia and the colonial states of Europe, post and modern colonial imperial state.
It's our duty to accept the offer
solidarity with Palestine. That this is where we come from. It's a mutual solidarity. It's not just one side solidarity. And all our understanding of solidarity is not that having a good feeling through Palestine or good analysis. This is how we can build this practically. And also we appreciate as Palestinians to be approached by collectives and political parties and solidarity and people who want to join the solidarity movement with Palestine, especially when they are involved in their local struggles with their local communities, because we understand how important this is, and also because we have our local communities in Germany and in Europe and elsewhere, and we have interest in this. So also this solidarity should be built based on mutual interest as well, because our people have to see direct benefit and influence from this beneficial solidarity movement. It's not only by statement, it's by confrontation and by struggling and this is where we prove that we are equal. Absolutely. And this is that's the lack also, I think, what we have in the Israeli society, because I meet many activists They agree with Palestine, but they don't see themselves in a level that they wanna pay a price
Because
for
it's
Palestine,
not
because
maybe.
doesn't mean something for them. But yes, we who are the classes who are able to pay the price for the liberation and for the resistance and for a free democratic Palestinian future, they are the one who have to decide.
Yes. Well, that's a very big question we are confronted with also in Germany. Who is ready to pay the price for the struggle, or in the struggle for the own interests in Germany too? It's not only about being a supporter of the liberation movement somewhere else. Yes, I agree a lot with you. I agree also that the mutual solidarity means that we also can learn a lot from the struggle in Palestine, from even the kids on the streets who are every day steadfast and every day standing in front of the checkpoints and not surrendering. And that's I think what we can really learn. And how can I say this? The situation in Israel and the minority who is maybe in solidarity with the Palestinian movement should not be the precondition in our minds for being for supporting the Palestinian cause. I guess in the way I see it in Germany, especially, it is always made to a precondition. So before you start supporting Palestine, you have to answer if you are then doing this or that or this with the Jewish people.
Yeah,
and so
not with the Jewish people, it's with the Zionist state of Israel. They are obsessed with having this, right of
absolutely,
Israel.
but I think I understand this too,
And
because
we as Palestinians, our people, not even political party, doesn't matter. Our people, me and everyone, we don't believe in right of Israel to exist. We say this clearly in Europe, in the United States, in New York, Wall Street. We don't mind. I don't mind pay any price for saying Israel does not has any right to exist over the stolen land of Palestine. Israel as a colonial state, Western fascist colonial state. The only people who have right for the free Palestine is the people we talked about. The people will for free land and free homeland and for equal right and for justice. This is the only thing. But no right for any colonies, no right for any imperialist tool. This
should be
never
accepted
be
in the
accepted.
movement. Yeah,
it will not be accepted.
Yes, I think this is maybe the turning point we are now, because since maybe 20 years or even longer, I think the solidarity movement is very much under pressure, but also kind of self-pressure not to be able to say anything that has anything to do with the right of existence of Israel or something similar. And this should be a turning point, that we start being absolutely correct and on the side of the liberation movement, and clearly understand that this state of Israel is a colonial project and nothing else, has always been from the beginning, and not accept the conditions of the violators for us to support or not support parts of the liberation movement or not. I think this is something that we have to deal with here before we start anything like supporting the liberation movement, because you cannot if you're not really convinced about what you're doing. And also it has a lot to do with the Germans to understand their own history. You said it before. It's not the Palestinians who should come around and make Germans understand what happened in history. They do actually. I have seen a lot of Palestinians bringing this history back to Germans and making a kind of a mirror to make them understand. Wait a minute, we didn't. It was not us. It was you. And even this is not right, because also fascism in Germany was a class phenomena. It was not just the working class killing Jews. It's not true. And a lot of, even the Zionists have been part of the propaganda against, against the working class and in history. So, I am just left to thank you a lot for the meeting, and I will have a look if there is more questions in the chat. So maybe, okay, there is another question about Israeli laws against Palestinian people. It's a little bit unclear to me if it's, I think they mean the national law in Israel, with the people Palestinians living in Israel who have an Israeli passport. I think this is the question. This was not kind of our subject today, or the topic is a little bit different, but maybe you want to say anything about this. What is the situation of the people, Palestinian people living in Israel, the 48s, under Israeli law? Is this, what about this new national convention they had?
Simply they are recognized as a second-class citizen, officially by law, because they are simply not Jewish, because Israel is a Jewish state.
Very easy, isn't it?
But I mean, the struggle and the existence of our people in 1948 is a very big topic, and we really different webinar to talk about, because it's
this is the main point about
Palestine, where there is the Zionist movement is settling, and also there where we have a very important part of our society that they are the most one who understand Israel, and they are recognized as a strategic danger of the state of Israel, on the existence of the state of Israel, because of majority situation and numbers. So it's a totally another topic, I think.
Absolutely. So I think we should not really deal with it here, because if we really want to go into depth of what is the specific kind of legislation, then we have to look at it very properly. But in the end, it is very easy. Israel has always
and also for the Palestinians, there is no law. Israel doesn't use this law. It's a fake. Yes, then how we can justify by law when we say Israel is sentencing 12 years old child 7 years to be in a security prison? This is by law. I mean, but this has been done in a official court. It's a colonial.
A lot of people in the are then very sophisticated about this, and are saying, well, this is the difference, because people in Israel have the equal rights, and people in occupied territories are under military law, so we're talking
even
about
our people who live in 1948, they were under military law until 67, I think.
And then they changed it, and now even they changed it again.
And they forced them to have the citizenship.
But I think even Germans and Europeans should know, especially if they're from a working class, that written law is a very different thing from living in a country and having equal rights. So even if in Israel at a certain time by law it was saying that Arabic and Hebrew is the same and equal, blah blah, in reality this was not the reality of the 48s. Exactly, it not even the reality for the Black Jews, for example, or for the Mizrahi Arab Jews who they brought from Yemen and other countries, who had not the same rights as the Ashkenazi.
The very sectarian, divided the society based on ethnicity and classes within the Jewish communities.
Absolutely. So maybe we can close this about this subject, and at another time maybe we can go into it more deeply.
I can also propose to I think it's important to invite one of the Jewish ex-Israeli comrades who believe in the liberation of Palestine and right of return, and he's with decolonizing Palestine and all of this, because I think this is important Jewish voices that must be heard, and opposing to the right-wing and so-called Israeli liberals and kind of NGOs are claiming for and also advocating for two-state solutions.
Yes. Absolutely. I think we should do it, and we should continue the talk about the problems we have and the misunderstandings or even the propaganda tools of the Zionist movement against the supporters of Palestine. And maybe we can find new, let's say, tools ourselves against this propaganda and go out. And this is also kind of a call for action for all the people attending now. And listening to this seminar, to this session later on YouTube, please use the comment section. That would be very, very important for us to, that people connect. And if they're interested, even if they're in other cities, not in Frankfurt, I guess a lot of people will not be in Frankfurt, then connect yourself in the comment section and feel free to advertise your own initiative, groups, whatever you're doing in support of the Palestinian liberation movement. And but still, I would like you to give us a little bit of calls if you want. If you, Mohammad, if you have anything you think is very necessary now, which is on the agenda, what is the next steps you think should be done? Is there anything urgent now on the agenda? I would like you to use the time to have any calls you want to.
I think it's very important for the already existing movement in Germany for Free Palestine and solidarity with Palestine to come together more and answer this kind of strategic question, to have things more clear on where they stand with the Palestinian people and whose and which power dynamics they support within the Palestinian society and within the national liberation movement, as well as there is a very big need for this solidarity movement to come together with the Palestinian community who live today in Germany, especially because the repression is faced by the state of Germany and by the Zionist lobby in Germany itself. It's very high and very strong, and it will be stronger and stronger because the movement with Palestine is going stronger and stronger. And as there will be a more movement for Palestine and for equal rights, and Israel is losing and isolating itself more and more and sieging itself with stupid walls and stupid settlements and borders and checkpoints, that this will be abolition one day, maybe after 100 years, but it doesn't matter. Until that time, we will keep building our communities, we will keep our culture of resistance to make it as the mainstream of our people culture and to integrate it with our daily life on the social level as Palestinians. Doesn't matter even if we are in Jabalia, in Gaza, or in West Bank, or in the refugee camps in Lebanon, or even in Dortmund and Dusseldorf and in Berlin. Our community in Germany, they are Germans, Palestinians. They have right of return and they have right to remain. And they have right to struggle in Germany for their equal rights with the German people. And in the same time, they have full right to struggle for their right of return and for their full rights in Palestine. And even for any payback from the Zionist colonial movement. And this is the case for our Palestinians communities everywhere on this globe, because now today we are one of the biggest diaspora. So I call as well for also the solidarity movement to think out of the box sometime and not only focusing when we think Palestine or how to support Palestine, our mind shift in West Bank and especially Ramallah. I think when we agree that the Palestinian people are 12 millions and 6 millions, they are in diaspora, our people in diaspora as well, they need to, we don't need money and we don't need the material support. We need a direct relationship with the peoples. They need to see solidarity delegations to the camps for comrades from Western societies, privileged society, to go there and serve the people and to integrate and see how that's how you understand how it's going on. And that's where we start solving our issues with equality and accepting to be equal and believing and humanizing the other and being in solving all of this social racist say separated question that we suffer from, all of us, because we live under capitalist, racist states and system internationally. So I think building a direct and mutual relationship with Palestinians, especially in the refugee camps in Lebanon and in Syria and Jordan and in Gaza, it's very important. Raising the voice of Palestine and even this confrontation with the Zionist movement. Don't be scared from media attacks and campaign. It's just stupid and it's not based on any legal questions. Even if we say, if we accept this, whatever legal systems in the countries where we live in, but this is not legal and they cannot prove it in any way. This is just campaigns to attack people and to make them far from the movement. Our response should be integrating more within the movement, not only with Palestine, supporting the Philippines, the Black Lives Matters movement, support the people of Lebanon, the resistance movement in Yemen, in Syria, and all around the globe, the workers in Sri Lanka and in India, the women rights. All of your participation in any of those rights is a participation on freedom for Palestine. And free Palestine from the river to the sea. Even the right wing in Germany will be angry with it.
Nice. Thank you very much. So this was a call for us to strengthen our movement here as well, and our struggle to be able to take part in the international struggle of the working class and the liberation movements.
And just to mention, as Samidoun as well, we organized the anti-annexation campaign, and later on last weeks there was the Days of Resistance, where many groups globally joined this call. We will call in September for a week of action and to appraise and to bring back the right of return question. And in that time, in September, we have the Sabra and Shatila massacre anniversary, and also Black September was done by the Jordanian regime and the Zionist State of Israel against the Palestinian Revolution. So we will appraise, bring back these two commemorations and these anniversaries, and we will coordinate and we will advocate and we will call for a week of actions for supporting right of return for the Palestinian people to their homeland. So please,
so people can join
the call, and feel free as well in terms of, because we didn't spoke about political prisoners, but if you have any question or if you want to be involved or if you need any information about the Palestinian political prisoners movement, or if you have any contact with a national liberation movement or any prisoners that you know and you think it's important to bring up this topic, please contact Samidoun and you feel free to join Samidoun as well.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Mohammad, for organizing this a lot. And
from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and we will feel free to say it again and again and bring it to the streets, and don't mind about the mayor of Frankfurt
freedom for Palestine and for all oppressed communities around the world, and equality and justice for all.
Okay, so thank you to being a vanguard of the international movement, and hope to see and support again and furthermore in the future. And I hope to see a lot of people in Germany on the streets when we continue working and so on. So I wish everyone
this constant solidarity and for this unconditional solidarity with our people, and this means a lot for us, and this is how we get our strength as well as a Palestinian National Liberation Movement. And this is how we face all of these Zionist attacks, and this is how we get empowered as well. And also as Palestinians, we do that when we get engaged with our people's struggle. It's not only the Palestinian struggle. Our struggle is equal to all other national liberation movements and international oppressed communities struggling for equality and justice and liberation and decolonization.
So now we are up to us to connect it.
Exactly.
And continue the struggle. Thank you a lot, Mohammad Khatib, and we will see you in action, and I hope everyone else as well. Have a good evening, everyone, and stay connected.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Free Palestine.
Ciao. Free Palestine.